Welcome to the 19th Century Charitable Association, whose vision has always been to be a dynamic cultural center for community learning. I'm Pat Cannon, a member of the Arts Subcommittee and responsible for today's program. As you see, it's Alfonso Iannelli, Renaissance Man. Our speaker is Dr. Maria Hrycelak, a Chicago native who actually has a local connection. She's a graduate of Oak Park and River Forest High School. And also, she graduated from the University of Illinois at Chicago and Loyola Stritch School of Medicine. She served her residency in Park Ridge, where she now has a large pediatric practice. She is currently president of the Ukrainian Medical Association and Foundation, which you can imagine is a fraught situation now. More pertinent in today's program, she is also president of the Kalo Foundation of Park Ridge, which is housed in Iannelli's former home and studio on Northwest Highway. I have been pleased to present programs there, and today Maria is returning the favor. So please welcome Maria to our stage.
Thank you very much for the invitation. As Pat said, I'm Maria Hrycelak. I am the president of the Kalo Foundation. And for those of you who may not be familiar with the Kalo Foundation, I'll just give you a couple slides on that before we get into Iannelli. About 20 years ago, a few women from Park Ridge went to a lecture about silversmithing, and they were really excited to find out that Park Ridge had a really rich art history and even a silversmith shop, which many of them did not know. There was a woman named Clara Bark-Wells who in 1900 graduated from the Art Institute, and she and 5 other women started something called the Kalo Shop. And the Kalo Shop in 1900 did leather and textile products, which they sold on Dearborn and later at the Fine Arts Building in Chicago. In 1905, she got married to a former president of Park Ridge, George Wells, and he suggested he liked silver, and he goes, how about he had some interest in silversmithing, and he said, why don't you start silversmithing business? So she did, and in 1907, they moved to Park Ridge, and they bought this house, which was the Kalo Community House and Workshop, where Clara hired Art Institute women, graduates, to be the silver designers, and she had immigrant, mostly Norse, from Sweden, Norway, Denmark, doing the actual silversmithing. It was a very lucrative business. She then moved, after about 7 years and getting divorced, she moved to Chicago, where the Kalo Shop was on Michigan Avenue till about 1970. The Kalo Shop, after we became an organization that wanted to preserve the artistic legacy of Park Ridge through education, advocacy, and programming, we needed a home. And the house before was a nice house, but it was expensive, and it really was not made for having any presentations. So we were lucky enough to hear about the demolishment of a house on the corner of Northwest Highway and Elm, which was the former home and studio of Alfonso Iannelli. Honestly, I lived in Park Ridge for a long time. I had no idea who Alfonso Iannelli was. But luckily, the community got together, and I like historic preservation, and I can actually say we saved the building. It doesn't happen very often, but we did. And basically the community and one angel. No involvement with the city, no involvement with the government, no involvement with anybody, so we are our own boss. So who exactly is Alfonso Iannelli? If you get anything from this talk, I hope what you get is you'll remember 3 or 4 things the next time you walk in Chicago and say, I know who did that. Iannelli was an artist, an illustrator, a teacher, a sculptor, and an industrial design person. Truly an artistic Renaissance man. He was born in Andretta, Italy, and his father came to the U.S. Earlier. He was a shoemaker. He wanted to set up his business, and then he sent for the family to come over. Alfonso came at age 10. Prior to that, while he was in Italy, he and his 2 brothers already worked for an artist making paintbrushes. They learned how to make paintbrushes. They learned how to make dye. So he already had an inkling of art and what he was going to do with it. By age 10, he had won a lot of scholarships, and one of the important ones was from Gutzon Borglund. I always forget, he's going to be Borglund for the rest of the talk. And Borglund, he worked for Borglund for a while, and Borglund, I think most of you know, I saw he spoke at your facility, is the Mount Rushmore sculptor. But the church that Iannelli worked with him was the cathedral in New York, St. John the Divine. It's in the Harlem area. Huge, thought to be the largest cathedral in the U.S. Now, he was his apprentice. He was his helper. One story that he tells that I think is interesting, and I think you can see from the thing, Borglund made all of the angels female. The church did not like that and said, angels are not female, they're all male. So we want you to change it. Well, Borglund got, I guess, for want of a better word, pissed off, and he destroyed all of them. He just took a hammer and he sledgehammered all of them. Iannelli says, we had fun doing that. And they did replace them all, making them masculine figures. One thing about Iannelli, when he was in New York, he didn't like the style of European art for the sake of art. He felt art for the sake of art meant if you don't have money, if you have no access to it, you will not see art. So he wanted to develop American art. And he said, I'm going to go to a smaller place and I'm going to try something else. He ended up going to Cincinnati. He became an illustrator. And this is one of the covers that was used several times on Harper's Weekly, and he was later in a lot of Harper's Bazaar articles. He wanted to find himself, and he actually uses the word, find the art in me. So he moved to Los Angeles. Los Angeles, he came across the Orpheum Theaters. The Orpheum Theater was a large vaudeville theater, and they had asked him if he could design a stained glass window. So he designed a stained glass window, and they were so happy with it that they asked him, we need advertisement. Could you come up with some posters for our, basically they put them in the hallway and on the front of the theater. These are, I just have a couple examples of them. He made over 100 of these posters. And if any of you went to the Bruce Goth exhibit, you would have seen one of the nice ones that was there. Goth actually owned one of it. And it was nice for me to see it up front where you could see the original with brush marks and everything, because we have copies of the posters, not originals. His wife, Margaret, who I'll talk a little bit about later, he met in Los Angeles, and she was also an illustrator and a designer, and she helped him, we think, with some of these. Because if you see the timing, you'll understand that he wasn't in LA all the time. He had another job in Chicago at that time. A lot of his work started out a little Art Nouveau-ish. You can see the curves, you could see the colors. He did like color. Red and black are Iannelli's favorite colors. Later on, you can see the triangular and the geometric sign, and this is something that gets into the kind of pre-Art Deco look. And there's one that I kind of want you to look at, and that's this one. And just remember this in a couple of slides. This was well, kind of in the time he was doing it, but it was a nice statue that he did, kind of a cubist statue, and long, very narrow, very geometric. Iannelli liked this, and this is when Cubism was coming out in the early 1900s, and he says, you know, it's nothing new. The Egyptians used it, the Aztecs used it, the Japanese used it, and you know, I like it. Now, one thing about the posters, a lot of people had spoken to Iannelli and said, why don't you publish them? Why don't you start selling them? And there's a quote by him, I don't want to be known as poster boy. And other people said, but you could be like Cassandra, Will Bradley, maybe even Mucha. These people made a lot of money off of the posters, but he never sold any of them. He kept them. He sold some to friends, but he did not publish them or print them. We didn't do that till the 60s or 70s. The art in Chicago, they made copies. How did Iannelli come to Chicago? Well, it was the boys. He met the right people when he was in LA. Frank Lloyd Wright's sons, John Lloyd Wright, Lloyd Wright, and Barry Byrne, who many of you may know from Unity Temple, worked with Frank Lloyd Wright. They roomed together, the three of them. Iannelli met them, and John Wright said, you know, my dad's looking for somebody to do some decorative architectural sculpturing he wanted to do, and since you did this, I think you're going to be a good fit for my dad's project. Midway Garden, and that was made, basically constructed. It was a concert venue in Hyde Park, a big Frank Lloyd Wright project, and Frank was, and I say Frank, it's like it's my buddy, Mr. Wright was looking for somebody that could take a sculpture and make it look like part of the architecture. Iannelli was not a licensed architect. He was only a sculptor, designer, industrial designer, everything else, but he was not an architect. And Wright's normal, regular sculptor, Richard Bach, was not available, and John called in and said, Dad, I have a guy for you. He saw some of his work and said, okay, I'm going to hire Alfonso Iannelli. These are a few of the first sketches that Iannelli made for the Midway Garden decorations. And there are two types, well, there's actually a bunch. If you ever read, they have a nice book by Paul Crudy on the Midway Garden. And there were several types of decorative features in there. This is what it looked, those were his designs, and this is what they looked like after they were completed. These were called sprites. We all are calling something else sprites now that I'll show you, but these were the sprites, and they were mostly on the inside of the garden. These caryatids with the wings were actually designed by Frank Lloyd Wright, but the face and the shoulders were by Iannelli. And you can see that triangle thing. Iannelli makes a lot of what we call sprites look like triangles. This is the sprite as we know it, or what we call a sprite. It was called a spindle at the time, but it was what we call a sprite now, this. And this was a decorative feature of the Midway Garden. This is just a picture of Midway Garden. This is how huge Midway Garden was. And remember, this is 1915, so it was a entertainment center, basically. People like Anna Pavlova danced there. They had multiple other orchestras and entertainers come. Here again, you can see sprites decorating. Now here comes and I went to Oak Park High, so of course I love Frank Lloyd Wright and Ernest Hemingway, but Frank Lloyd Wright did not like to share his work with a lot of people. An article came out in a magazine that said that Wright designed all of the sculptures and architecture of Midway Garden, and that Iannelli executed them. Well, Iannelli and Wright wrote each other letters back and forth. No, you didn't. Yes, I did. No, you did. Yes, I did. And finally, there is negotiation, and the result was, okay, we're going to say that I'm the architect and you're the sculptor. And Iannelli agreed to that. Even Frank, he blamed his son. He goes, oh, John must have done that. I didn't do that. And yet he said there was a mural that John painted and put up, and I see it in these letters. Oh, John didn't do that. That's my mural. So he's kind of a tough boss to follow, Frank. But it took us a while to get the Frank Lloyd Wright Foundation here in Oak Park to acknowledge that those sprites that you're selling were designed and executed by none other than Alfonso Iannelli. They have somewhat conceded to that. Unfortunately, 1920, already Prohibition started, so the next few years, business started going down. In about 1921, they already sold it, and it was a brewery for a few years, which I don't know why you would have a brewery during Prohibition. That sounded like a bad sales pitch. It didn't last long. Then they were a tire center. And the tire center, there's literature or newspaper articles that say they painted the sculptures all these weird colors, really gaudy colors. Now, the sad part is they demolished it and they bulldozed the building. And they bulldozed it, we're not exactly sure if it went exactly into Lake Michigan or just under Lakeshore Drive. But they did see dry landfills with sprite heads sticking out of them. So one gentleman was smart at the time, and he loaded up several of them and took them over to Wisconsin and kept them on his farm there. And we were lucky enough to obtain, this is an original sprite head, not a copy, and it is at Iannelli Studios. If you ever would like to take a short, it took us 20 minutes to get here today, so not bad. We also are one of the few people, and if not maybe the only people, that have an original full block of Midway Garden. A lot of people like urban remains and a lot of the stores, you go on eBay, oh, you can get Midway Garden piece. There are pieces. We have the whole wall, and in our exhibit, right next to it, we have a picture where you can see, it looks exactly like this, so we're very proud of that. And this is Professor Crudy, and he spoke at our studio on multiple occasions, but he did write a nice book on Midway Garden. So we get to what else is Iannelli doing while he's in Chicago. His wife, by the way, is still in Los Angeles. He designed this building, which is the courthouse in Iowa, and it was first offered the job to Borglum, and Borglum wanted $10,000 for doing the job, and they said, no, that is too much, and why don't, do you know somebody else? And he said, yeah, I happen to know a good sculptor, so he gave them Iannelli's name, and Iannelli did this nice big thing and a little bit of sculpture for $4,000 at the time. This is law, the lawgiver, and apparently these are the people who benefit from the law. This is supposed to be one of the largest prairie buildings on the inside, prairie design. It's a beautiful looking inside. I just focused right now on the Iannelli part. Iannelli began collaborating with Barry Byrne. Again, Byrne was the architect, Iannelli is the sculptor. One of their first collaborations was the Frank House. And it still stands. It has been redecorated a little bit. One of the things that we like, they have I can't see on this angle, but he has a real nice wall mural, colorful wall mural that is over the fireplace, and that was a Iannelli piece. They collaborated on some buildings in Chicago. This is in South Shore, called the Kenna Apartments, and as you can see, and you kind of get an idea, Iannelli's stuff looks, you can identify it after a while. It's very blocky, it's very geometric. That building still stands today. The Cedar Collection, this is in Park Ridge, and it was one of our former mayors who had a very nice house, and he wanted a nice view across from his house. So he hired Byrne and Iannelli to create a Cotswold village, bunch of cottages. So when he's at home, that's what he's looking at. And right behind the cottages is busy Northwest Highway, so he blocked it very nicely. Unfortunately, there were 5 houses. One was demolished. Recently, the center one was demolished but rebuilt. It's okay, but it doesn't have the nice Cotswold roofing like the others do. One of our members lives in one of these houses, and it is a Park Ridge landmark. It's very nice if you're ever in Park Ridge. It's just it's a nice arc. It's very English. They also worked on several churches. I think most people know that the Archdiocese was a big proponent of building sculptures, churches, and they had the money for it. A couple of the important ones are St. Thomas the Apostle in Hyde Park. This church stands. It's just a few blocks from, the Roby House in Hyde Park. This is a beautiful house when you stand here, church, in Racine, Wisconsin. And the location is just great. On a hill, you stand by the harbor and you can see it. This caused problems with, again, the church hierarchy. They go, our donors don't like this church. It doesn't look like a church. So they actually fired Byrne and Iannelli. And they said, we are looking for a sculptor to change the front of it. The sculptors that they hired were not happy about it themselves. They go, these guys created it. We don't want to do it. So Iannelli and Byrne wrote a letter and said, okay, we'll work with you and try to do it. But they shut them down and said, thank you, but no thank you. The other nice one is the Church of Christ King in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And this is a church that is known for its stained glass. Iannelli Studios. Iannelli had formed Iannelli Studios already in LA in 1912. And then when he came to Chicago, he continued calling it Iannelli Studios. And he had several people helping with the stained glass. Iannelli obviously designed some. Margaret, his wife, Edgar Miller designed a couple of them, Ruth Blackwell, and a Olive Rice. They're very nice. We have seen, there was a nice exhibit in Racine, Wisconsin, that they actually showed the drawings of how they were made, and then the final, they had one window. So here's Margaret and Alfonso Iannelli and Iannelli Studios in Park Ridge, which they opened in 1917. He moved her back from Los Angeles, and they began work. Again, she helped a lot. She helped Iannelli with the posters. Iannelli was teaching at the Art Institute at that time, and Margaret would come and teach illustration courses also. It's kind of sad about Margaret, though. Margaret, although talented, and I have my own theory on it, they had 3 kids, and their 3rd child died from crib death. And I think it was the trigger for Margaret's mental illness. And for the first, and remember, she's in her 20s. For the first maybe 3-4 years, Iannelli had her living on a farm in Arlington Heights with some caretakers. But by 1930, she had deteriorated so much that she was institutionalized at Elgin Mental Hospital, where she stayed till she died. The 30 years that she was at Elgin, she was still active as an illustrator. She did some, they used to have mimeograph copies of their newsletters, and she would make Christmas cards. Early on, when she was still in Arlington Heights, she was able to come into the city and do some illustration for Marshall Field was a big client of Iannelli Studios. The house, this is the studio as it looked in the early 20s and 30s. It was white and all brick. It used to be, it's an old building that was a blacksmith shop at first. So it's somewhere, it's debatable. Everything you read says, it's 100 years old. Well, this is already 100 years old. So if it was a blacksmith shop, it's got to be 120 or 130 years old. It was expanded by Barry Byrne, and Iannelli got together, and Byrne is the one who drew the plans to take the home and the other building, connect them, and make a studio. Byrne stayed with Iannelli for a while. These are some of the names of the people who were consistently working or visiting Iannelli Studios. Ruth Blackwell. Ruth Blackwell, I have this here only in case if you ever go to the Pickwick Theater. This is a naked mermaid. Everybody thought Iannelli did it, but Ruth Blackwell made it. And the reason I mention it is they put it right when you're going to the men's bathroom. There was some debate on, this is art, is this art? But the other thing about Ruth lived at Iannelli Studios the whole time. And there is, I think most people think Iannelli was a good-looking guy, and they were probably more than professional associates. Bruce Goth was there. Bruce was brought by Iannelli from another project that they did, and he worked with Iannelli for probably about 4 or 5 years and went out on his own. John Lloyd Wright is the person who brought Iannelli here and worked with him during Midway Garden. Edgar Miller, another character. Edgar Miller worked at Iannelli Studios, and there are a few interesting just tidbits about him and Iannelli. They designed, well, I'll tell the story when we get to a picture of the sculpture, but they ended up parting ways, and Miller did very well on his own. Some people think it was because they both had big egos. Some people think it's because Miller called Iannelli a communist. Iannelli said, I'm not, I'm a socialist. I'm into Democrats. So there's debate about what's what. And then Harold H.R. Zook. And Zook is an architect who designed the Pickwick in Chicago and a couple of houses. He's more known in Hinsdale. The interesting thing is, out of these 6 people, out of these 5 people, 4 were architects. So they went on to architectural business more. Ruth was the only one who was a designer and stayed with Iannelli then. Iannelli Studios became a big commercial project. People went to them for designs, advertisement, later on designing industrial equipment. So there was people said Iannelli's not known because Iannelli's not really an artist. He's just the commercial guy. And I hope by the end of the talk you'll say, no, I think this guy was a pretty impressive artist. This is a statue that was at Immaculata High School, which used to be on Sheridan Road, Catholic high school. And in, I forgot what year it was, probably in the early 80s, it was sold to, again, the building was designed by Byrne. Iannelli did the sculptures. It was bought by an Islamic school. Islam, which was new to me, I did not know, believes in Mary. Virgin Mary is a saint in Islam. But they do not believe in idols of them. So they moved the statue and they donated it to the University of Chicago Smart Museum, who promptly put it in their basement, and it was there for a long time. One of Immaculata alumni and a person who had contact with Kalo found it in the basement and said, hey, we should try to get it back. On our website, kalofoundation.org, if you search a little bit, there is a nice movie about how we were able to move the 11-foot, 1-ton statue back to Iannelli Studios, where it is on exhibit. Interestingly, these 2 ladies are from the Chicago History Museum, and they just contacted me and said, Maria, we're doing a exhibit on religious art. Do you think you could loan it to us? And we're like, I don't think so. I mean, we had to make it stand and hold against the wall into the concrete. And I am coming up with a nice way of saying no, but perhaps you may want to do A, B, C. But it's a nice thing. A lot of people come to Chicago who either lived in that area or whose mothers or grandmothers went to Immaculata. This is, I know a lot of people in Chicago have houses in Michigan City or travel to Michigan City. If you're ever there, stop in to St. Mary's. There is a beautiful altar that was done by Iannelli for the Barker family, who has a lot of house. Oh, they had a business there, and they have a beautiful mansion. Now, in 1924, Iannelli and Byrne decided, we're going to go to Europe and see what's going on. These gentlemen were interested in modernism, as I think you can tell by what their buildings looked like. So they went to Germany, to Paris, Vienna, and met many Bauhaus and just modernist sculptors and painters, and Klimt, Kandinsky. When you look at it, they all corresponded and they all knew each other. Mies van der Rohe, when he came to Chicago, well, before he came to Chicago, he signed some prints for Iannelli and Byrne when they were there in Germany. This form by Storrs, who was a Chicagoan but happened to be in Paris at that time. Byrne bought a couple of them and had them on exhibit at a Byrne exhibit. But Mies van der Rohe was friendly with both of them, even when he was, by the time they got back to Chicago. I like this. I think this is the coolest observatory. It just looks so alien, but it's still standing. It was damaged during World War II, but they repaired it. It's a very nice example of modernism. Iannelli, as a teacher, taught at the Art Institute. He did not have a high school diploma, but they made him the director of design. And again, Margaret helped him a lot with that. I have the highlighted red here, items that we have at our studio. We have the Lincoln Highway prototype that he wanted, that he gave them. He says, I want you guys to use this for Lincoln prototype for the highway. They didn't accept it. And nobody really knows has anybody ever seen a statue of Lincoln on Lincoln Highway? I haven't seen it. I don't know if they ever decided to do that. We also have, it's Immaculata. It's the Madonna. And then the third one is the Sprite. He put some of the Midway Garden on exhibit there. This is one of many of his designs for Monument Garden, Monument Fountain, he called it. And we rotate his designs on our exhibit. The others are permanent. They're concrete. They're huge. You're not going to move them anywhere. He was awarded a Certificate of Fine Arts from the Art Institute. And I think this is one of the interesting brochures that Margaret put together for one of their classes. This was a sculpture that Iannelli had done, and Margaret took it and kind of moved it around a little bit and made the brochure for the extended art classes. This is our gem in Park Ridge, the Pickwick Theater. The Pickwick Theater is a massive Art Deco exhibit. Iannelli, again, not being the architect, did not design it. That was Zook and another gentleman called McCoy. This is the fire curtain, which unfortunately most of us have not had a chance to see because it's made out of asbestos, and the owners decided we're not taking it down. They rolled it up, and it probably first time was about 20 years ago, 15, that they took it down once. And since then, with liability, he says, I'm not doing that, which is too bad. We have a beautiful picture of it close up. Iannelli designed the marquee. He designed the inside. He designed even the ticket booth. Everything that's in there, the sconces, the carpeting, is all Iannelli. If you haven't been to the Pickwick, it's beautiful. And it's definitely worth your time. There's another theater in Barrington. That's the Kalo Theater. It does not look as cool from the outside, but inside it's nice. But since it's our competition and I'm from Park Ridge, we're showing the Pickwick. The Adler Planetarium. This is another thing that many of you may have walked by and not known that Iannelli designed it, or not it, but Iannelli designed the sculptures. There are sculptures that went all around the planetarium. If you walk around the planetarium, and you can't walk around it like we could when we were kids, where you could actually go around all of it, you will see all the zodiac signs. Some of them are enclosed now, so you actually have to go into the planetarium. But he designed those, and then he designed one plaque on the inside with all the planets on it. And that is kind of a cute story to that. Remember, this is 1930, and my favorite picture is, we have a copy of this from the planetarium. They were very cooperative with us. It's Iannelli in a suit, sitting there chiseling the zodiacs. These are what all the zodiacs looked like. And the one planet plaque that he has on the inside, when he did it, there was no Pluto. It got discovered about 6 months later. They said, Iannelli, you got to change it. He goes, I'm not changing it. It says we're opening the museum in a couple of weeks. So he left it out. And in his own way, he was right, because Pluto's been demoted now and is not a planet. So that worked. This is one of the zodiacs, Sagittarius. And we are lucky enough to have an original maquette, which is the prototype of it, at our studio. It was donated by this gentleman, Dan Lober, who just kind of had it in his back porch. We go, yeah, I think we could take better care of it. And the lady here is the curator of the planetarium, so we invited her to come and see when we had the opening. Iannelli also was involved in the 1933 World's Fair. He did several of the exhibits. He actually proposed a lot more, but they weren't all accepted. The big ones that he did was the entrance to the radio exhibit, and this must have been beautiful because it had purple neon lights. So you can imagine long gas neon color would have looked beautiful. He also worked on Elgin watches. This is the Haviline thermometer for Haviline oil, I think. And it was actually a working thermometer. It's about 30 feet, and when you were at the park, you could see what the temperature was that day. They gave you little souvenirs of that at the fair too. The big thing that Iannelli Studios did was Enchanted Island, and this was two things. One of them was Radio Flyer, and the other was a museum, not a museum, a park for kids. Radio Flyer, as most of you know, have grandkids. They all have radio flyers. Used to have all the metal ones. Now we have plastic ones and these giant things. But Iannelli did not design Radio Flyer. Another Italian company down in River Grove did. But the gentleman came to Iannelli and said, I want a boy on top of the thing. So Iannelli designed and sculpted Coaster Boy, who you can see is a huge exhibit because here's a lady standing next to it. Enchanted Island was a park with several, you can see here, a lot of the statues, they were basically big cardboard, giant cardboard and wood statues of Wizard of Oz and some other characters. Those were created by Ruth Blackwell of Iannelli Studios. Now, later on in life, Iannelli decided, I'm going to go into industrial design. Everybody uses items. I want to be involved. I think most of you, if you didn't have them, then your grandmothers had them or your mothers had them. The coffee maker, double coffee maker, the Osterizer. I think everybody knows that. This coffee maker, we have, and I have one personally. You can buy them on eBay. They're not expensive. They work. I mean, it is so hot, you have to be careful how well it works. The Osterizer, they still make new ones. Now, he did not do the mechanisms. He did all the decorating. This is what it should look like. You guys make it work. Most of you, if you went to a soda shop as kids, you remember that. We have a nice one we just got that is Art Deco green, sort of like Miami Beach green. Bakelite, he was one of the first guys that used Bakelite and now, you know, if you try to buy a Bakelite purse or so, it's a little on the expensive side. Iannelli had a lot of patents, but the patents were for the companies, not so much for him. He had one patent that was a sole patent, and it was never built. Invisible Kitchen, it was called. And basically everything was hidden in the cabinets. The washer, the stove, you know, the dishwasher, the stove, the fridge. Actually, I think today in the minimalistic world that millennials have their apartments, it would do great. This is a hair dryer. I owned one of these. That's my hair dryer. And I bought it only for one reason. It does work, by the way. The instructions on it have a little picture on what you can do with it. And the last picture is a mother drying a baby's butt. As a pediatrician, I go, this is just cool. I mean, I got to do this. So this is Ever Sharp pens. And Iannelli designed this Art Deco gold pen, which we had a very interesting speaker who spoke about pens. They had a pen convention in Rosemont, and I invited him over. And he said it is one of the finest Art Deco pens and is considered one of the premier pens, not inexpensive. Now, here's something that many of you may know while you're taking selfies with your grandkids at the Bean. Remember the Prudential Building, which was the largest building in Chicago when I was a kid? There is a massive rock of Gibraltar on the side. Iannelli sculpted that. This is a picture of Iannelli standing on the scaffold, sculpting it, and the street here, Michigan Avenue, there's nothing there. I mean, it's really interesting. And this was 1955. So next time you look, you're walking down Michigan Avenue, take a look. Iannelli Studios is, we like to say, gone international. That Sagittarius was at an Art Deco exhibit in Italy. We made a copy of our Lincoln bus that we have, and it was bronzed in France, and it stands as an independent statue, 1 block from the Champs-Élysées in Paris. So we're very proud of that. Iannelli worked for about 70 years as a artist. This early on, this is one of his latest pictures. I put the latest picture on because I like historic preservation, and this picture was taken by a gentleman called Richard Nickel, which many of you may know. Richard Nickel lived in Park Ridge. He put everything in his backyard that he brought when he saved Louis Sullivan artifacts. Neighbors, not too thrilled, but they liked it, and poor Richard, as you know, passed away when he was trying to save the demolition of the Stock Exchange building. So I think you see, Iannelli knew a lot of people, worked with a lot of people, made a lot of objects. If you're ever in Park Ridge, we invite you to come and see. We hold also classes, book signings. We have tours of the Pickwick. We, have art classes, and we try to network with other museums. We also award scholarships. So I encourage you to visit. We're only open second and fourth Saturday of the month, but if you want a private tour, just email us and we'll make it happen. Thank you for your attention, and I hope you enjoyed it. Any questions? Yes.
It features a color theme here of, as our speaker pointed out, of black and salmon with blue and faces in this kind of cubic design on here. It has a black banjo band. Remember, this is the early 20th, so they're kind of black-faced characters. A couple here, black cat, black waiters, and then in the background here, a sort of a suggestion of a skyline.
Any more questions? Back here.
Did he have any children, and what kind of person was he?
Person was he? Okay, it depends who you talk to, I guess, but most people said he was fun, he was nice. He did not mind when the other architects left. He he was basically friends with most people. A little misunderstanding, as you know, with Wright and with Miller, but they stayed friends, Miller and him, and he did go to Wright's funeral, and so, they stayed friends. Now, what we know about Iannelli from reading and from this, he liked to socialize, he invited people over, he was a ladies' man for decades, and in general, nothing bad other than politics, if you didn't agree with politics. That was it. But
He was Italian, so he was a nice guy. And
he had 3 children. One is, his name was Alfonso, Fonz, and if you look up Alfonso Iannelli Jr., if you Google him, he was a talented photographer who took military pictures during World War II. A lot of pictures for the Navy, so they're all on, on the ship decks with the jets coming down and stuff. So he was talented. His son, interestingly, I went further down. He was in a rock group, and he is one of the inventors of the Moog synthesizer, which was in that time. So this was a talented family. Margaret, he, the son. Bibi, the daughter, was not interested in art, but she was very involved. She moved to a little town, I think Missouri, and she opened an animal shelter. She was known, and she ran the animal shelter and donated a large amount of funds to that. Orem, their 3rd child, died. So, and unfortunately for Bibi's 2 kids, Bibi is still alive, or was still alive for a long time. She had 2 daughters. They both died of breast cancer under age 40. So they really had a poor family history. But the kids were estranged from Iannelli, and we think it's probably because of Ruth and Iannelli being more than friends, probably. And although he took care of Margaret all the time, Margaret wrote him letters, he wrote letters. But Iannelli is buried in our cemetery in Park Ridge. What's the name of the cemetery? Main Township Cemetery. But there's no marker there. He's buried on the plot of the Guard family. Sam Guard, you may have seen or heard if you ever went on a tour to Hyde Park. He's an older gentleman, and I've been trying to work with Sam to allow us to rebuild the monument that Iannelli made for Sam's daughter, which we have at the studio also. Sam says, Maria, I got time. I go, Sam, come on, give us permission, written permission. Sam is 99. And I'm like, I understand. I'm happy for you, but could you at least get it in writing for us? We would and we'd like to put a plaque for Iannelli in Park Ridge on our site.
Your collection of images is exceptional. How long did it take you to get them all together?
It's taken me a while. I've been doing this now for a long time, so I have like 3 or 4. Okay, this is Kalo only. This is because I do a whole thing on Clara. She is kind of my hero. Divorce, no alimony. He was a bum. And it's in the newspaper like that. She became involved in the suffrage movement. She led the march on Washington for Chicago. So I have her, then I have Iannelli, but I love doing it, so I just collect whatever I can. I love going and reading old articles from the newspaper and see how they were all involved together. So.
Okay, well, thanks everybody.
Thank you.
We'll see you downstairs.